The garden was quiet. Not the kind of silence that feels empty, but the kind that wraps around you like a warm shawl. Mara Whitmore moved slowly along the rows of roses, trimming stray stems, her gloved hands gentle, precise. The sun dipped lower, painting everything in soft amber tones. She found comfort in the rhythm of pruning. Clip, pull, drop. It was the one place where no one needed anything from her, where she wasn't someone's mother or someone's afterthought, just Mara. A woman with soil under her nails and silence as her companion. Then the sound that shattered it all, a metallic click. The mailbox. At first, she didn't even look up. Mail didn't matter these days, just catalogs, coupons, donation requests she never responded to. But something was different this time. The way the wind stilled, the way her breath suddenly felt too loud. She stood slowly and walked over. There it was, a single envelope, thick, stiff, heavier than it should be. The kind of envelope that comes with consequences. Not joy, not surprise, but endings. Her name was printed across the front, Mrs. Mara Whitmore, small, tight, official font. She stared at it. No handwriting, no return address, no softness, just cold formality, like a stranger writing to a stranger. She took it inside her boots, leaving faint streaks of dirt on the kitchen floor. She set it on the counter next to the watering can, peeled off her gloves, and stood for a long moment. She didn't want to open it, didn't need to, because somewhere deep inside, she already knew. But hands move even when the heart begs them not to. She unfolded the letter. Just one sentence. No greeting, no warmth, no mercy. Please do not attend the upcoming Whitmore family reunion. It's best we part ways for now. Signed at the bottom, not Love Graham, not even your son, just Graham. That was it. No explanation, no apology, just erasure. Like she'd been edited out of her own family. And maybe the most painful part, it wasn't a surprise. Not really. She had felt herself disappearing for years. She stared at the letter until her eyes burned, as if looking hard enough might change the ink, might force the words to become something else, something softer, something human. But they didn't. They never do. The breeze through the kitchen screen door nudged the corner of the letter, as if even the wind hesitated for her. She reached out and gently pressed the page flat again with her palm, grounding it like grounding pain. And then she picked up her phone. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, trembling, but only slightly. There were 100 things she could have written, a lifetime's worth of heartbreak packed into unsent paragraphs. She could have asked, "Why, Graham? What did I do so wrong? After everything I gave up for you?" But she didn't. Because she had already asked those questions, just not with words. She'd asked them in the hours she spent working night shifts to pay tuition. She asked them in the silence of birthdays spent alone, in the hurt behind every photo she wasn't included in. So this time, she typed just one word, understood. No period, no question mark, just raw, stripped-down finality. And then she hit send. Her phone screen dimmed, then locked. Outside the garden hose lay half-coiled near the hydrangeas, forgotten. The water still ran softly, trickling over the gravel. And in the stillness of her kitchen, something broke quietly, but permanently. That one word didn't mean acceptance. It meant, I've seen enough. I'm done begging to matter. And in that silence, a storm years in the making finally began to speak. Graham was 6 when Daniel died. 6 years old, still small enough to need help tying his shoes, but old enough to understand that something was very, very wrong. The funeral was held on a rainy Tuesday. Mara didn't cry during the service. She couldn't. She was too busy watching her son, his little suit too big for his frame, his hands fidgeting with the corners of a damp tissue. He held her hand tight, like a lifeline, and she gripped it back with everything she had left. "We'll figure it out," she whispered to him. "You and me, together." But when she said those words, she didn't realize just how much figuring out there would be. She didn't know that grief would stretch into years, or that survival would require her to become everything and everyone. 30 days after the funeral, she sold the house, the one with the white fence and lemon tree in the back. She couldn't walk past Daniel's empty chair at the kitchen table anymore. They moved into a small apartment on the south side of Charleston. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, no sunlight. It wasn't home, but it was a start. And Mara, she started breaking herself in half. She took a job teaching at the local middle school during the mornings and worked the evening shift at the library on weekends. She cleaned houses on her off days, and during the summer she tutored kids who could barely afford pencils. Her PhD dreams deferred, then deferred again. Until one day, a letter arrived in the mail informing her she was no longer enrolled. No one saw her cry that day, not even Graham, because she didn't. She just folded the letter in 2 and kept going, because that's what single mothers do. They bury their dreams quietly and then show up for everyone else. There were nights when Mara would forget what sleep felt like. She'd clock out at the library just after midnight, her fingers sore from reshelving books, her eyes gritty from hours spent staring at catalog screens. She'd drive home on half-lit streets, her body running purely on autopilot. And by 6:30 the next morning, she'd be back up, buttoning her blouse, packing Graham's lunch, and preparing lesson plans. She barely had the energy to teach. During summer breaks, while other mothers took their children to the beach or the park, Mara tutored neighborhood kids in living rooms that smelled of mildew and hope. She made $5 an hour, sometimes $7. It wasn't much, but it was something, and something meant Graham got to eat without worry. She learned how to stretch spaghetti into 3 meals, how to make birthday cakes from boxed mix and powdered sugar. She got good at fixing things with duct tape, shoes, school bags, sometimes even her own pride. But through it all, she never complained. Not once. Not even in her journal. Because for Mara, every missed hour of sleep, every sore muscle, every quiet tear shed in the bathroom while the water ran, it was worth it. "He's my whole world," she used to whisper to herself, folding laundry at 1 a.m. "He doesn't need to know how tired I am, just that I'm here." And she always was. There. Present. Even when it hurt. When the acceptance letter from Vanderbilt came, Mara cried harder than she had at Daniel's funeral. But this time, the tears were from something else. Hope, pride, relief, a sense that maybe, just maybe, all the sacrifices had meant something. Graham had worked hard. He was brilliant, built computers from yard sale parts, won science fairs using borrowed poster boards and duct-taped wiring. He deserved this. But brilliance doesn't pay tuition. And partial scholarships don't cover room, board, and textbooks. So Mara did what Mara always did. She opened the drawer where she kept the emergency envelope, the one labeled retirement, and she emptied it. Not because she was reckless, but because she believed in her son more than she believed in any financial plan. She also co-signed his student loans, line after line of fine print she barely understood, but signed anyway. He'll pay it back, she told herself. Not with money maybe, but with the life he builds. After graduation, Graham came home with startup dreams and a business plan printed on glossy paper. He was excited, fast-talking, lit up with ambition. But the bank said no. He was too young, no assets, no history. So, once again, Mara stepped in. She co-signed a business loan. When that wasn't enough, she dipped into what was left of her pension, her real emergency fund. "Just until we get traction," Graham said. "You're the only one I trust, Mom." A few weeks later, he called. She had just walked in from the grocery store, her hands still full of reusable bags and receipts. "We're official," he said, breathless. "Techline is live. You're going to be proud of me." And Mara smiled. She said all the right things. But something in his voice was different now. Cooler, sharper, like he was calling a colleague, not a mother. In the beginning, the phone still rang often. Graham would call with updates, exciting news about Techline, new hires, investment leads. His voice buzzed with ambition, with purpose. But then the calls started coming less frequently. First from once a day to once a week, then once every few weeks, then only when he needed something. "Hey, Nam, can you take a quick look at this lease? Can you co-sign this credit line? Could you transfer $2,000 just to float us through payroll?" Always polite, always appreciative. But never curious, never asking how she was doing. Mara didn't complain. She always picked up, always helped, always said yes. Because a part of her still believed it's just a phase. He'll come back around. Once things settle down, we'll have time. But time passed, and holidays came and went with only a text. Her birthday, forgotten twice. Thanksgiving, a photo sent from Napa Valley with Lydia's parents, everyone raising glasses, smiling. She wasn't in the picture. Not just literally, but emotionally. One day, she logged onto social media and found a photo Graham had posted, a family photo, matching outfits, beautiful backdrop, captioned, "Nothing matters more than family." And in the sea of smiling faces, Mara wasn't there. It was a Thursday morning. Mara had just finished watering her hydrangeas when she stepped inside for coffee. She wasn't expecting anything, just a quiet day the way most days had become. But habits are strange. She opened her phone like always and tapped into Instagram, mostly to check on her niece, Ava. Ava was the kind who posted everything: new outfits, latte art, sunsets filtered into gold. Today's post, though, wasn't like the others. It was a boomerang. Ava flipping through a set of thick, embossed invitations, each tied with a navy blue ribbon. One was held up like a trophy. The caption read, "Can't wait for the Whitmore family reunion. Napa, here we come." Mara blinked. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She stared at the photo, her breath catching. Then she read it again, slowly, word by word. Family reunion. Everyone knew. Everyone except the mother of the man whose name was printed on the front of that invitation. There had been no call, no email, not even a group text she'd been accidentally removed from. Nothing. She scrolled through the comments. Lydia had left a row of heart emojis. Someone else mentioned a senator possibly attending. Another comment read, "The Whitmores and Whites always do it big." Mara sat down at the kitchen table, phone still in hand. The hydrangeas outside seemed too bright now, too unaware. That evening, she called Ava. She didn't ask directly, just made small talk. "How's the internship going? How's your roommate?" Eventually, Ava brought it up. "Isn't it exciting about the reunion, Lydia? Lydia's been working with a PR team to get it featured in Heritage Families magazine." Then, casually, "Are you and Uncle Graham flying in together?" Mara's voice didn't crack. She just said, "I didn't think I'd be going." There was silence on the other end. Then Ava's voice, suddenly quieter. "Oh, I'm sure it was just an oversight." But Mara heard the truth, and in that silence, she felt the invitation that never came. It happened 2 days after Mara saw the Instagram post. She was sitting on the porch with Ruth, her neighbor, her only friend who never asked too much. They were sipping sweet tea, watching the sky slowly shift into dusk. Mara's phone buzzed. She didn't check it right away, but it kept buzzing, and eventually she picked up. It was Graham. The call connected on speaker, her phone lying on the table between them. His voice came through clear, clipped, businesslike. "I just don't think it's smart to have her there." Mara's heart stilled. Ruth froze mid-sip. "She doesn't fit the image we're trying to project now." A pause. "Lydia's parents have been coordinating with the Bradfords. Optics matter. These kinds of events get press now." That was it. No anger, no shame, just words. Professional, sanitized, surgical. Mara didn't respond. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She just looked out at the hydrangeas swaying in the breeze and felt 30 years of motherhood collapse quietly inside her. Not screamed, not mourned, just erased. Graham's voice again. "I'm not trying to be cruel, but sometimes you have to curate your legacy." She ended the call. Before he could finish the sentence, Ruth didn't say a word. She didn't have to. She just reached out and placed her hand on Mara's, and in that stillness, the final thread snapped. The next morning, Mara dressed carefully, not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because there's a certain kind of armor in buttoned cuffs and pressed slacks, a kind of quiet dignity that says, "I've made up my mind." She hadn't seen Elliot in over a decade. His office still sat inside the old brick carriage house on Broad Street, the same place she and Daniel had walked into hand in hand when Graham was born to update their wills. Back then, they had spoken of college funds and guardianship plans, smiling through exhaustion and hope. Now, she walked in alone. The wooden door creaked the same way it always had. The room still smelled faintly of old paper and lemon oil. And there, Elliot was older, grayer, but still calm, still patient. He looked up from his desk as she entered, and as if he already knew, he nodded slowly. "Mara," he said, gently closing his folder, "I was wondering when I might see you again." She didn't sit right away. Instead, she reached into her purse, pulled out the envelope, and placed it on the desk between them. Graham's letter. She smoothed it out just once, then she said the words that tasted like ash. "I want my son's name removed from the trust." Elliot didn't speak. Not at first. He didn't ask why, didn't push. He just looked at her, really looked. And in his silence, Mara felt something she hadn't felt in years acknowledged. This wasn't a woman making a rash decision. This was a mother who had crossed beyond grief into clarity. Her name was Jade Taylor, 19 years old, working part-time at a local grocery store while raising her two younger siblings, both still in elementary school. Her mother had overdosed the year before. Her father, long gone. They weren't related, not by blood, but that had never mattered to Mara. Jade was the kind of girl who showed up quietly without making it about herself. When Mara caught the flu last winter, Jade appeared at her doorstep with soup, tissues, and a box of saltine crackers without being asked. She stayed just long enough to check Mara's temperature, refill her water, and straighten the blanket over her shoulders. And every time Mara tried to thank her, Jade would smile and say, "Just doing what decent people do, ma'am." Ma'am. She always called her that, even after Mara told her, "You don't have to be so formal." But Jade never stopped, because respect to her wasn't something optional, it was survival. It was how she carried herself in a world that had given her very little. Jade never asked for anything. Not money, not favors, not pity. And when Mara once told her, "I'm proud of you," Jade had cried. Not loud, not messy, just a single tear, as if no one had said that to her before. So when Elliot asked, "Do you have an alternate beneficiary in mind?" Mara didn't hesitate. She reached into her bag and handed him a folded paper. Jade's name was written neatly across the top. As Elliot reviewed the file, Mara sat with her spine straight, hands steady. For the first time in years, she didn't feel weak. She felt right. The next morning, the phone started ringing before 8 a.m. By 8:07, Mara had already received 3 missed calls. By 10 a.m., the number had climbed to 17. By noon, it was over 40. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Each voicemail was more frantic than the last. "Mom, what the hell did you do? You're destroying everything we've built. This is outrageous. Do you even realize what position you've put me in?" His voice cracked, not from sadness, but panic, entitlement, like she had broken some unspoken rule of eternal loyalty. And then came the emails. Subject lines in all caps. "Reverse immediately. Legal consequences. Call me now." By early afternoon, a thick manila envelope arrived by courier. Formal legal notice. A request for immediate reversal of the trust reassignment. Mara placed the envelope on the kitchen table right next to the napkin holder, and she went back outside. The blueberry bushes needed fertilizing. Let them panic, she thought. Let the truth surface. Because Elliot had already told her the part Graham never planned to. 3 weeks earlier, Graham had submitted documents trying to use her trust as collateral for a high-risk private deal, without telling her. Without consent, without legal right. He had presented himself as authorized, as if Mara was just a quiet formality he could step over. If she hadn't changed the paperwork when she did, she could have been legally liable for millions in defaulted loans. Her name, her credit, her retirement, all at risk. And all Graham had needed to do it was her silence. He didn't call ahead, he didn't text. Graham just showed up, unannounced, uninvited, and furious. He stood at Mara's front door, in a navy blazer, hair too perfect, jaw clenched tight. He knocked sharply 3 times, insistent, like a man demanding entry to something he believed still belonged to him. Mara opened the door, not because she wanted to, but because she didn't want the neighbors to hear what she already knew was coming. He walked in like he remembered every inch of the house, like it was still his. Like she hadn't been erased from his life, one polished decision at a time. They sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where he once did math homework, legs swinging, cookie crumbs on the placemat. Now, the only thing between them was a silence heavy enough to crush glass. Graham started first. "You had no right to change the trust without discussing it with me." Mara looked at him, calm, steady. "I had every right." He pushed forward. "You blindsided me."
Lydia's parents are furious. We're in the middle of a funding round. Do you even understand the kind of instability this signals?
She folded her hands in her lap, then said quietly, "You didn't send me an invitation." He blinked. "What?" "To the reunion. You didn't send me one. Everyone else got theirs, but you didn't even pretend." Graham opened his mouth, then closed it. Silence. Mara leaned forward slightly. Her voice firm, not unkind. "You cut me out of your life a long time ago, Graham. I'm just finishing what you started." That landed like a stone on marble. He sat back, processing. "We can fix this. Issue a statement, say you had a medical emergency, re-sign the trust, spin it." Mara stood up. "It's not spin, it's truth, and truth doesn't need permission." Graham didn't answer. He just stood, jaw ticking, then muttered, "We'll see what the lawyers say." He walked out. She didn't follow, didn't even close the door until his car pulled away. Because for the first time in 3 decades, she wasn't afraid of what he'd say next. The manila envelope still sat on the kitchen table. It had been there for 3 days, unopened, unmoved. Mara walked past it each morning. She would glance at it briefly, just enough to acknowledge it, and then she'd go on with her day. On the 4th day, she picked it up, held it, weighed it in her hands. And then, with the same calm she once used to fold Graham's baby clothes, she tore it in half, then into quarters, then again, until it was nothing but legal confetti. She dropped the pieces into the trash, wiped her hands clean on a dish towel, and poured herself a glass of water. Her phone was still lighting up with messages, calls, voicemails, emails. She didn't turn it off. She didn't answer it either. She just set it face down, on the table. Like a book she had already finished, a story that no longer needed a reread. And in that moment, she realized she wasn't angry, not anymore, because anger requires hope, and she had finally let that go. What remained between her and Graham wasn't hatred, it wasn't bitterness, it was something quieter, harder. It was release. The bond of motherhood had not vanished, it still existed, but now it was no longer a chain. The next week, Mara started volunteering at the community center, Tuesdays and Thursdays. She taught a small group of young women, most of them no older than Jade, how to read loan contracts, how to open a bank account that no one else could touch, how to say no without apologizing, how to protect their futures with documents, not just hope. She brought snacks, printed handouts, answered questions that weren't even asked because sometimes girls don't know what they're allowed to ask. Mara wasn't a hero. She didn't wear a cape. She just showed up. And that, she realized, was enough. On a quiet Monday, she met Jade at the bank. Jade wore that same faded green hoodie she always wore, the one with a tear at the sleeve. Her eyes darted nervously around the marble lobby like she was waiting for someone to tell her she didn't belong. But Mara stood beside her. They sat with a banker. Mara explained the account. Jade's name would be primary. Funds would be released as needed for tuition, housing, books. No one else could touch it, not even Mara. She kept her tone steady, her voice clear. Jade nodded slowly, barely saying a word. And when it was done, when the paperwork was signed and the banker stood to shake their hands, Jade turned to Mara, eyes glassy, voice shaking. "No one's ever done anything like this for me." Mara smiled. "You earned it, sweetheart. I just opened the door." Jade reached out and hugged her. No drama, no big speech, just a hug. And in that moment, Mara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Weightless, whole, alive. The photo sat on her nightstand, a little dusty, faded from years of sun through the window. It was a picture from Graham's 10th birthday. He wore a pirate hat. Mara had drawn a mustache on his face with a Crayola marker. They were both laughing. Back when love was loud and simple. Back when forever fit inside a hug. She hadn't looked at that photo in months. Tonight, she picked it up. She traced the edges with her fingers. Not shaking, not crying, just steady, clear. And then, quietly, as if speaking only to the past, "I still love you, Graham. But now, I love me too." She smiled. And for the first time in a very long time, she meant it. Because sometimes the most courageous kind of love is the one that chooses to walk away, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of respect for your own worth. Not every bond deserves to be preserved, especially when love is one-sided. We often grow up believing that being a mother means endless sacrifice, that love means giving until there's nothing left. But the truth is, real love has boundaries. Real love knows when to say, enough. Mara's story isn't just about heartbreak. It's about reclaiming your voice after years of being silent. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't shout. She simply chose herself gently but firmly. And that's the most powerful healing of all. The lesson is, loving yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes it's the bravest way to say, "I forgive you, but I'm moving on." If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or unloved in the very place you were supposed to feel safe, let Through Her Eyes be your reminder that your story matters. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories like this, stories that heal, empower, and speak truth. And if you're walking through the dark right now, just know you're not alone.